us up first.
Yeah, Carrie, if you could just kind of fill us in on, what is maybe the main takeaway that you want your team to have coming off Saturday's game, where you were in that for a lot of the game with NDSU and then it kind of slipped away.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the challenge of games. At this point in the season against really good teams who haven't lost in 20 plus games, is just the fine line, and there's just not a lot of room for error. We felt like there were several stretches where, there was a stretch in the second quarter where we felt like we had a few empty possessions where we felt like, okay, those could have been, pivotal and kind of building maybe a little bit of a bigger lead. And it really just comes down to it's small things, but those small things kind of add up when it comes to, like I said, playing against the best team in the league right now who's on a roll, and there's just not a lot of room for error.
Before that, you had won a stretch of really close games. What do you think how helpful is that for your team to win these close games in league play to get where you ultimately want to go?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot about, at this point in the season, again, kind of late February, a lot of games just come down to possessions, and you got to figure out ways to win those kind of games, even when it's not pretty. And I felt like we did that several times in games where maybe it doesn't feel great. You don't feel like you're playing great necessarily, or things aren't really going your way. And you just got to kind of grind it out and find ways to win possessions, and then, hopefully end up winning games. So I do think those experiences, especially kind of late in season, I mean, it's one thing to have close games in November or December, but now you're in February, and if you haven't had a close game for a couple of months, sometimes you get in those situations late, and you kind of forget what to do. So, from an experience standpoint, I think it's helpful. From a confidence in those situations, I think it's helpful. And then just, like I said, just understanding that, at this point in the season, you might not have a lot of blowouts. It's going to be possession basketball, and you got to understand the importance and value of each and every possession.
You guys beat STSU the first time earlier this season. How much of the blueprint from that game do you think is repeatable? How much will you reference, hey, this is what we did, this is what we need to do to win this time around?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime you have success, you want to take some things from that. I'm also, understand that they're gonna make adjustments as well, and they're probably gonna be ready for a couple of the things that we did, and have some counters ready for that. And so, that's I think the thing that's really interesting and a bit challenging, right, when you play teams the second time is if you were successful, understanding that you're not going to probably be able to do everything you did the first time to be successful, because there's good coaches in the league, and they're gonna be ready for that. But also understanding maybe some of the reasons why you were successful, and being able to carry the why. You might just have to execute it differently.
You still have the 2 seed at stake this week if you guys have a good week. Is that something you've thought much about? Do you think it matters much? How important is that to try to potentially get in a position where you'd have a day off in the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, you just said it, right? The day off is I think super helpful. So I don't think we've made the 2 seed the emphasis. It's just, we're trying to win as many games as possible before we get to the tournament. We're trying to play as well as we possibly can going into the tournament. So, for us, it's the conversation right now is like, we still have time and room to improve. Let's keep getting better, and hopefully that growth, right, will help you be a little bit more successful in the tournament.
I'm writing a little bit more broadly about the challenge system, sort of in college basketball in the Summit League for the first time this year. What's been your experience with being able to challenge calls this year?
I think we haven't used it, but maybe one time. I think a little bit of it is sometimes our staffs in the Summit League aren't quite big enough to be able to have one person designated to like watching a camera or your iPad, paying attention to something just like that. You know what I mean? So a lot of times it's, we think maybe it was deflected, differently than maybe it was called, but the value of timeouts is also something that's super important. And there was a call in the NDSU game. I think it was in the first quarter that I wanted to challenge, but you're also thinking in the back of your mind, what's the value of this possession compared to a timeout maybe late in the game.
And yet, you typically, you need the timeout to be able to challenge, but in the women's game, you also need that timeout to advance the ball and later in the game. So I imagine that's also a thought a lot as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if you're sure, obviously it's great. I just think it's hard to be sure without taking a look somewhere. And like I said, sometimes you don't always have all the people necessary for that.
Thank you.
Adam, go ahead.
Coach, with North Dakota up next, you probably haven't thought much about this yet, but South Dakota State, they've now won 5 in a row. I don't think they've lost a game since you beat them when you played them the first time, but if they're like on a 6-game winning streak and you and them both have the opportunity to go in and with that 2 seed possibly up for grabs in that game, how excited do you think the players would feel about the opportunity of going on the road against an in-state opponent with that at stake?
Yeah, you just said it. I think, that obviously would be an exciting opportunity. What's interesting about that scenario is there's a lot yet to play out before we even get to that. Obviously we've got a tough game at UND. It'll be senior day. They're going to be, locked in, and it's not an easy place to play. And for SDSU, they obviously have NDSU on the road. So we both have challenges ahead of us before we see each other.
In the last game, there was some foul trouble with key players, and there were a few players that you weren't able to play as much and get in sync with the offense as much. Is that something that going forward you have maybe an extra emphasis on trying to avoid? Obviously, sometimes you can never control the call the referee makes, but is that something that you have in mind in preparation when you're preparing for future games?
Yeah, honestly, that's been an emphasis all season long. Early in the year, we had quite a bit of foul trouble. And I think our players have grown a lot in their discipline in trying not to get silly fouls. Unfortunately, both Angie and Patience, were in foul trouble in the first half in the game at NDSU. And, some of that is, I thought Angie's first one was just great hustle, trying to make a play. And sometimes, unfortunately, you get called for a foul, and she was trying to make a play on a ball and ended up, hitting the kid. So it's a fine line. You don't want your team to play passive or, not aggressive, just trying to avoid fouls. I think that was a big game. Our players were trying to make plays and be tough on the defensive end, and sometimes that's just how it goes.
Last game, this team has offense mindset of trying to drive to the lane and score points in the paint. Against North Dakota State, they're in the fourth quarter, I believe, shooting around 30%. Like you said in the post game, there were some shots to where, like Molly Joyce had some almost point-blank looks that just didn't go in, and you said most of the time that's going to go in for it, but they happen not to. Is that something that you try and have some preparation for it to trying to avoid it, or would you say that's just part of basketball and sometimes the shots aren't going to go in?
Yeah, that's part of basketball. Sometimes great scorers have a challenge getting the ball to go in the basket. And maybe a little bit with Molly in that fourth quarter was, she didn't get much of a break at all, with Angie having to sit for that. I think it was 7 minutes and 19 seconds in the the second quarter. So Molly was carrying a pretty big load, kind of helping us at the PG spot, and obviously still trying to make plays. And I think over the course of a game that can maybe wear on somebody.
With how with North Dakota and South Dakota State, with how you beat them in the first game of the season, would you say that's something that gives the girls a little bit of confidence of knowing that what they did the last time played them worked very well, or would you say that's been a while ago in the season and that almost doesn't really matter to them and they're treating this game like it's completely different?
I think honestly every game that you play well and that or maybe you win a close game, all of those experiences I think kind of add up and build kind of a collective confidence for your team. You can go all the way back to beating K-State, in the non-conference part of the season. Like, that gave our team enough confidence to kind of move forward and believe that, okay, hey, maybe we have a pretty good team here. So I don't necessarily think that it doesn't impact at the same time. I think our team is wise enough to know that just because you beat a team by 19 the first time doesn't mean that it's going to be easy or that it's just going to happen again the way it did the first time. So I think it's probably a little bit of both, actually.
And if both games are won this week, it would mean a regular season sweep over both teams. In a mid-major conference to win competition and stuff, what do you think the girls would feel about finishing the season off with 2 straight wins and a season sweep of both teams and just having won 3 of your last 4 games?
Yeah, that would be ideal. That would be great. I think that would give our team a lot of confidence going into the conference tournament. But the mindset for the team right now is definitely, making sure that we're ready to go for North Dakota. You can't win them both until you win the first one.
And has there been any conversation about they secured the top 3 seed in the tournament on Wednesday, and now it's almost like if you control your own destiny by winning these next 2 games, then you could possibly have the top 2 seed. Has that been any topic of discussion in the locker room?
Not necessarily specifically, but definitely they're aware. They're aware of what's happening in the Summit League and those sorts of things. But for us, the conversation is always what's right in front of us and making sure that we're focused on, the task that's in front of us. I think for this team in particular, it helps them to be able to lock in on, just like I said, what's right in front rather than worrying about kind of, the big picture or what if this happens or what if that happens. Really all we can control is what's right in front of us in the game that we're playing right now. And we talk a lot about that a lot, just controlling the controllables and making sure that we're ready to play and making sure that we're continuing to improve, and then the rest will take care of itself.
All right, thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.